Hey, can you guys hear me? Can you see me? What are the things that are happening? I've never gone live like this. I'm usually going live through Google Hangouts, so I don't know if you can watch or if you can see me. Start saying words and stuff so I know you're there. Sorry, guys. It took me a while. YouTube is changing things, and they're making my life more difficult, so let me know where you're at, how we're doing. Starting a little behind. Sorry about that. Sorry. Can you hear me? Can you see? Can you see the screen? I'm getting 5 people are here. As you guys are trickling in. You know what? I need to change the video on my things. Okay. Good. People can hear me. Good things are happening. If you watched the last live stream, that's literally the stack of papers that was there at the end of the last live stream because, Miss Puckett is good at things and definitely takes care of business and stuff. So that's good. So today, okay, good. Okay, this is making me happier. I was worried, guys. I'm so sorry. All right. Moses, you're cracking me up. I can hear you. All right, let's go. Okay, sorry, guys. I got out of class later than expected, and then I have not even sat down since walking in the door. So let's do the things. Things and stuff that you can see. Hopefully. Okay. I need to turn on lights because I literally walked in, put my computer down, and didn't turn on any lights. That's why it's a little bit shadowy and special. Right now, what I would like for you guys to do is be sure you have something colorful to write with. Be sure you have something in front of you you have a stack of papers. Also, y'all, right now, I want you to think of your questions. I want you to think of the questions you have. I want you to think of what are some things you're wondering about, because part of the problem sometimes, guys, is that it takes me a while to know exactly where we're going and exactly what we're going to talk about. And so I'm like, part of these videos is me waiting for you to respond. And I say waiting, not because you're not answering when I ask, but I say waiting because literally there's like a delay. And so there's that. So right now, what I would like you to think about is, I'm going to go to my channel so I can see it. I can see what you see, but not hear myself because that's trippy and weird. It makes everything terrible. Hold on, and I need to plug in my computer because it's going to die. That'll be that. All right. Oh, everything's wrong. That is fine. Everything's fine. Here we go. Okay. Like when you guys greet each other, it makes me happy. Okay, so first thing that's going to be on the test. This is a test that's going to cover. Can we see this? Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. I wonder if you can see these. Can you? Yes. Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, and then we'll head into JQA, Jackson, and then a touch of our boy Van B. All right. So right now, I want you to think about what are some confusions you have and questions you have. And y'all, here's what I want you to do. I want you to right now, on your own paper, write down the questions you have. Then I want you to write I want you to write the events that are confusing you, the things you want to hear more about. I'll do overviews, but I want to be sure I'm making clear, I can speed through where I need to speed through. So right now, that's what I would like for you guys to take care of. That's what I need you guys to take care of. Okay, so right now you're figuring out what do you really need to know. Look through your notes. Maybe if there's a note that you didn't quite finish, maybe it was Monroe, maybe it was Van Buren. Where do you got? y'all, I missed the trash. The trash collector person comes at 8, and they just walked by, and I missed it. It's terrible. Okay, Eli, I like you're talking about the log cabin election. It's a little bit after Bombi, so we're going to say log cabin. That is an interesting bit. To be fair, VMB is not super important. He's only important because he comes after Jackson. There's a few things that happen in his presidency that are like, oh, that's valuable, but it's not like he's no Jefferson, which I feel like he might be proud of. So there's that. Oh goodness, everything's wrong. So many piles of things. All the piles are happening. Oh. Okay, anybody? Bueller? Anyone? 41 of you are watching. Ask things. Take care of things. Ask more questions. Move that out of the way. Oof. Things. Okay. Okay. Economic circle during his presidency. Oh, Marshall Court. I like that word saying that. Hey, Antonia. Natalie. Court cases. Okay. I had forgotten to add this. I'm glad you guys reminded me. Okay, Noah, they're all significant for the test of life. So there's that. Okay. So War. What was important about JQA? I'm seeing some good stuff from you guys. Lexus de Tocqueville. I mean, I feel like you need to know what you did on your paper about him. There is a delay. Goodness. That's why you guys are taking so long to answer. Okay, y'all, the delay on this is like a while. So there's that. So guys, ask your questions early and often. American system. Ooh, I like that we're asking about American system. Am I watching it live? Okay, maybe I'm not. John Tyler's presidency? Not really. Go over the major topics. There's like a lot of things. Just remember which court cases. Marie, I can remember you. I can teach you some funny some memory tricks. I'll do memory tricks for court cases. The Whigs. War of 1812. Macon's Bill. Ooh, I kind of forget. I think Macon's Bill is actually over here. National Bank. Eli, you said, and there are differences. The differences between what? Jeb Dean, I don't know who you are, bud. I'm looking at the economic crisis. Okay, there's a few of them. One of them happens in Monroe. Panic, 1819. There's another one somewhere in this period. It's like the Panic of 1845. Honestly, you don't need to differentiate the panics between the two. Okay, thank you, Eli. First and Second National Bank issues. Okay, so with Jefferson, we have, you guys didn't really ask any questions about him. I'm going to write down, we don't need to know compromises for this test, know them for life later. You know, you don't need to know about the bridges. No. Louisiana Purchase. It's a purchase for Jefferson. Marbury v. Madison happens in his presidency. What else happens in his presidency? The Embargo Act, because he's smart. Yikes. From the wrong one. Okay. Barbary. War of 1812. What do you guys want to know about that? I feel like you guys are asking a lot of questions about it, and I'm kind of thrown as to why. I pulled the paper down a little. Yes, I can. That's fair. Yes. Nullification Crisis Treaty. Ghent. Nullification. You guys haven't learned about the Erie Canal, but that's going to be like the only thing that happens in his presidency that matters. Okay, what else? Anything else we need to know? Oh my gosh, Cece. Oh, Cece, classic Cece. Cece's throwing back for me to 8th grade. No. Oh my goodness, guys, you're killing me here. Give me a second. I gotta pull up some things so I can better help you. Oh my gosh, okay. I'm gonna drag this over, hop this into, maybe I don't, because it's, oh geez, this is the worst. Okay. Dates to memorize. Erica, what you doing, girl? All right. Whig party. Okay, that's fair. The Whigs. Okay. So, seeing things. Guys, I'm trying to be as helpful as I can for you here, and I'm trying to like organize my screen. Oofda, y'all. Oofda. Tecumseh's War. Oh, it's not really his war per se. What was it? My life control room, maybe. Oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous. We have to know Trail of Tears. I mean, you need to know what the Trail of Tears is, which I'm sure you do. In history, don't ever worry about dates, but war always think more about the sequentialness of things. It more matters that things are that you understand the sequence of what's happening. Okay, so I'm going to do that to hopefully get more paper on screen. There's that. Okay. So I'm going to kind of go off of this. I'm going to hit Jefferson at the end because it didn't sound or look like a lot of you are confused about Jefferson. It looks like you guys have a pretty good handle on him. Yes. Oh, Henry Clay. Ooh, I'm going to add Henry Clay Gray so that Henry Clay does a lot of things. Ooh, Webster Hayne. What's about nullification? You know, some of this stuff, when you get confused, honestly, Quizlet has a lot of the answers. And sometimes when I'm like, oh, I forget how to explain this. Like, I literally Google your question, and then I synthesize it in my brain, and I spit it out to you in a way that I hope makes sense. So there's that. Making myself irrelevant. Let's start. Okay, so we have John Adams leaves the presidency. Adams leaves the presidency and walks Jefferson as a Democratic Republican. Jefferson comes in. He purchases Louisiana. He purchases Louisiana for a few reasons. The primary thing he was looking to purchase with Louisiana was he was trying to avoid a war with France, basically, because he just wanted to purchase New Orleans, so we wouldn't be worried about trade rights and stuff with them. And so, in order to kind of furthermore avoid war, he does let Robert Livingston and James Monroe purchase the whole Louisiana territory for $15 million. It doubles the size of the U.S., and it happens in 1803. Those are kind of like the highlight reel of that. We'll go over Marbury versus Madison in court cases. The Embargo Act was a disaster. Guys, it was a hot mess. It was like the worst. Yeah, Napoleon didn't like it. Napoleon didn't like Louisiana, or he just didn't have a use for it. The Embargo Act, though, the Embargo Act was terrible. It was a real trash. Made a lot of people real mad. And they were not super thrilled with Jackson in this moment. However, kind of a weird positive effect that it had, because we couldn't get goods from England, it has this strange effect of it makes us have to start manufacturing and quickly in order to produce goods. So manufacturing goes up because now we can't trade with other people. Drastically. Okay. The Embargo Act cuts off trade with all foreign countries, not just our rivals, but pretty much everybody. It's not a great thing. Any questions about him? Yes, Josh, and I'll say this. Josh said, even if the economy was so severely damaged, the increased manufacturing strengthened it for the future. Yes, but like it hurt the economy in such a way that like it wasn't like, well, it was all worth it in the end. It was like you got really lucky. This was a very like lucky thing that happens, because it could have gone a lot worse. But in this moment, Jefferson gets kind of lucky with how it all kind of went down. I'm trying to think if you guys need to know anything else for that. Because foreign trade, especially, and guys, if you think about it in our nation, foreign trade is severely damaged, especially in our port cities. Our port cities are real mad, and like that's like Boston, New York, kind of like the New England area. But it's also going to impact places like South Carolina. And basically the whole reason he does this, the whole reason that this happens is because of French and British impressment. Okay, does that make sense? We're kind of clear on this? How are we feeling, folks? Ish? Eh? Okay, so and basically because of people are impressing our sailors, we get mad, and that's the things. Okay, so the next thing that happens is Madison. Madison comes into office. And Madison's kind of claim to fame is the War of 1812. And that, remember the War of 1812 is Mr. Madison's War. Yeah. If I have any more markers, and I don't think I do. Ooh, at least not here. Okay. Okay. So we have, this is basically called because threats to American neutrality. America was trying to remain neutral in the wars, or kind of in the struggle between France and Britain. Britain comes after our sailors. Britain's in, and so because British impressment. And y'all, this is a war that is really just like, it's not like a war that you're like, oh, and it was so hard fought. We did so many things and it achieved so much. No, it was kind of like, I just realized I left my milk out all day. I just like looked over, the milk is still sitting out because I'm really good in the mornings. I'm good at morning pockets, super good at things. Oh, Antonio, you asked about this one. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Tony and Josh. I'm going to go back to your points in a second. So the cause of the War of 1812 was the impressment of sailors. In order to kind of like repair, he's trying to repair things between the two countries. And so basically we passed the Non-Intercourse Act, like as soon as he gets into office, which says we won't trade with anyone. We'll trade with everybody except for France and Britain. So non-intercourse. And basically, Macon's bill said, here's the thing, Britain and France. Whoever agrees to be loyal first and not capture our sailors, we will trade with you. At least I think that is. Okay. So kind of going backtracking, Josh and Antonia, thank you for holding me accountable to the things. So in Jefferson's presidency, we also deal with like the Barbary pirates. Essentially, the of Tripoli are capturing our men, and they're saying they want us to pay tribute for it. They want us to pay a bribe. Guys, is it flickering on you? Because, oh my gosh, that is the worst. What is happening? That is trippy, and I hate it. Why is it doing that? Okay, it's not blinking anymore. That was terrible. Y'all. Oof. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay, I love how, like, as I said it, then everyone's like, yes, it's terrible. It's the worst. I can't see anything. Also same. Okay, so Barbary. In the Barbary states, the Barbary state of Tripoli started attacking our ships, and they wanted us to pay them a bribe. We said, we won't pay you a bribe, and they said, haha, let's go to war. And so they said, haha, well, we're going to take you to war. But, like, for America, like, it wasn't, like, really a war. What did I do? It wasn't really a war. It was like a skirmish we had to take care of in Tripoli. And it goes on for a couple of years, and eventually they surrender. And we decide, Tripoli, they want a bribe. And we don't pay for it because that's not who we are. And because they want a bribe, then and we don't pay it. And eventually, after the skirmish, we pay bribes to all Barbary states, except Tripoli, because we're petty, and I like it. Did we capture the Cyrus and use them? Not that I'm aware of, Kevin, but like I haven't read that far into the Barbary pirate things. And Josh, the other thing you asked about was Federalists in New England were against the war because it hurt trade-based economy, but didn't the South export agricultural goods? Yes, but the South could deal with just exporting to the North. Like, they were fine with that. The only real, like, port city the South had was Charleston. Barbary War was only Jefferson. Josh, probably. That's probably true, yes. And they didn't want to reduce the size of the Navy necessarily, just the size of the government in general. Okay. So moving on to Madison, moving back over, jumping ship here, if you will, to him. Okay. So we have the War of 1812. The War of 1812 is interesting on a few levels because it happened. It's like it's also called the Second War of American Independence. There's some people that are really for it. We have war hawks who are mainly from the South and the West. We have war hawks from the South and the West that are pushing for war. They really want it. We have Federalists in the Northeast that don't want the war because it's going to cause problems for trade. And so those are kind of some of the issues we had going into it. Essentially, we get into the war, and Madison doesn't really want to go into it, but it eventually becomes known as Mr. Madison's War because Federalists are trying to make it seem like this is a war that only he wanted. And so Federalists, during this time period, they get mad and decide to hold something called the Hartford Convention. And they start to talk secession. They start talking about possibly seceding from the Union because they do not want to want to go to war with England. And so New England starts talking secession. Word gets out, and it is bad for them. Word gets out, and they're seen as, because this is the Federalists. The Federalists have the Hartford Convention, and the Federalists are now seen as traitors. So they go distinctly down in the things. What are the motives of the Warhawks aside from territorial gain? That was kind of it, and like a chance to fight England again. Like, oh, this is gonna be such a good idea. And then, like, after the war starts, they slowly realize, like, this is a terrible idea. This is never going to work. This is going to take forever. We don't have the money for this. Sorry, as I'm looking at things. Other stuff and things for you to know. During the war, there's a Shawnee chieftain who becomes very famous, and that's Tecumseh. Oh no. Is that better? Okay. I'll tell me when the lights are flickering and I can fix it. I say I can fix it, I'll fix it-ish. Tecumseh comes into play, and Tecumseh is a Shawnee leader. He tries to unite the tribes. And he dies at the Battle of Tippecanoe, which is a battle that a later president, William Henry Harrison, will triumph at. So that's the whole thing. Before Madison, America tried to stay neutral because it was still young and in debt. Eventually, America did declare war. Was it because we had the resources to do so? Not really. It's kind of, we feel like we're kind of pushed into the war. I feel like I think it's the, give me a second. We feel like we're kind of like bullied into it and it has to happen. But like it's almost as soon as it happens, we stop. Like as soon as it starts, both sides are like, oh no, this is a bad idea. At the Battle of Fort McHenry, Francis Scott Key writes the Star Spangled Banner. Eventually, pretty much the war ends, and the war ends pretty like, it's not swiftly, but it ends pretty swiftly. No pun intended. The war ends with the Treaty of Ghent. The Treaty of Ghent in Belgium ends the war. And the Treaty of Ghent ends the war. No territory changes hands. Nothing really changes. Everything kind of stays the same. And then the U.S. becomes more independent. The U.S. is more independent. We start manufacturing more. So there's that. And because there's no more political parties, because that's no longer a deal, when our next president comes into play, we are pretty much a single party nation, and we're kind of loving it. So did the U.S. resume trade with Britain after the Treaty of Ghent? Yes. As soon as we could, we did, because it helps us to do that. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to start drawing something. Now I can't think of it. Monroe. All right, so Monroe comes into play. Monroe ushers in the era of good feelings. They are short-lived, but they do exist. The common man issues arrived under Jackson. Okay, so Brianna, we're going to talk about that when we talk about court cases. Because I figure we'll do all the court cases together. Let's see. Okay, for Monroe, there's a bunch of things that happened during his presidency. We have the Missouri Compromise. We have Adams O'Neese. American System. Gibbons versus Ogden. McCulloch versus Maryland. The Monroe Doctrine. He's a busy guy, this one. Okay, so the Missouri Compromise essentially, Missouri wants to enter the Union, but if Missouri enters the Union, it will disrupt the balance of free and slave states in Congress. This is a problem because what if they want to come in Missouri wants to come in as a slave state. Well, what if in coming in as a slave state in Congress, they pass a law that's going to ban slavery that's going to not ban slavery, make slavery legal in all the states. Free states don't want that. So they say, no, we can't have Missouri come in without maintaining the balance because they're a slave state. So Maine has been wanting to split up with Massachusetts anyways because they were once one state. So they come in as a free country. We maintain, or free state. We maintain balance in Congress. It is also decided that everywhere north of the 3630 parallel in the Louisiana Territory will be free. Okay. Adams-Onis Treaty. So the Seminoles were like, so on your quizzes, one of the questions was about the Seminoles. They were like the one group that doesn't, I don't see anybody commenting, and I don't know why it is. I feel like you guys would have told me something, but maybe I'm wrong. What is happening? Why is it doing that again? Okay. All right. Basically Jackson chases the Seminoles everywhere. Jackson chases the Seminoles down into Florida. The Seminoles down in Florida, Florida is kind of this like really interesting mix because if you think about what the United States is at the time, think random things that I have. So randomly have this. I don't know what of it you can see. So there's that. So this is the U.S. Random things that teachers have around their house. It's actually Danielle got this for me, so there's that. So we have like Florida right here, and basically runaway slaves would actually run to Florida because they would escape into Spanish territory, and then they can't be captured and brought back. So we have runaway slaves here. We have the Spanish here. We have Seminoles here. Florida is kind of lots of things are happening. Andrew Jackson chases the Seminoles down into Florida, gets to Florida, captures one of the bases. He captures one of the bases, and in capturing one of the bases, contacts John Quincy Adams, is like, hey, I'm down here. I've captured one of the Spanish bases. Like, what do you want me to do? Because the Seminoles were the ones that wouldn't leave. They wouldn't leave their land. They successfully fought resistance. U.S. signed a treaty to add Florida to our colonies. Or not our colonies, our states. Okay. Yes. So Eli asked, why would the 3630 parallel thing, why would they create, if it supposedly created all the sectionalism? And the issue that it has is that we're going to start this debate that won't go away of maintaining balance. Everything we do from this point on is about maintaining balance between free and slave states. The American system was for internal improvements. Basically, we spend federal money on internal improvements, which is like railroads, not a hashtag, it's a railroad because, trains, canals, and then like roads in general. We spend it on that to help us move all these goods that we've now processed. That's going to be a really good thing for us. So it's for money for internal improvements. Monroe Doctrine, essentially a bunch of Latin American countries were getting their freedom. And when everybody in our backyard is getting their freedom and they're becoming more and more independent, hooray for them, hooray for them, hooray for them. But that means our fear is that England, up here, England or Spain or France, they're going to come over and they're going to try to send more people to colonize. So Monroe issues the Monroe Doctrine, and he says that the Western Hemisphere is closed for future colonization. If you have colonies, they can stay, but you can't send new people over to colonize. You can't colonize new things. And he does this kind of unilaterally, and there's no way he can enforce it, but he says it, and people listen. And I sometimes call it the Monroe Doctrine because it stopped Western colonization of the Western Hemisphere. You know, Tony, no, they really weren't. Alaska is really actually kind of far from us at this point because, like, there's a whole, like, Europe between the things. Like, maybe... Yeah, Josh, like, I mean, it was effective because nobody, like, did anything, but, like, they had, it's mostly because they had their own business to deal with, and they, like, couldn't waste the things. And then they had to secure real with Brendan help protect the Western Hemisphere. Antonia, that could very well be true. It is late. That is not where my brain is thinking right now, but I don't disagree with you. Okay, so that is the other thing. Y'all, you need to know, basically, the bank loans out money to people to buy land. And all these people buy a ton of land, not because they want to live on a ton of land, but they buy it because they think, oh, I'm going to buy all this land and then I'm going to sell it. I'm going to make a lot of money. And so people buy land because they're expecting to make money to sell it to other people. But because there's so much land out in the West because of the Louisiana Purchase, it's really cheap, and they actually buy it for more than they can sell it for. And so they take out these big loans from the banks that now they can't pay back. And now the banks can't, now we're having issues with the banks again, and the banks can't, pay back their lenders and all these other things. And so basically we have banks that start closing, banks run out of money. And it has to do with speculation of land. Basically, they thought the land was going to be more valuable than it was, but because there was so much of it, the prices dropped, and they ended up paying more for it initially than they were able to sell it for. So Monroe was like the era of good feelings. He wins this election by a huge, huge margin. And then in walks JQA. And y'all, JQA, if I spend more than 5 minutes on him, I'm moving on. John Quincy Adams comes into the presidency because of a corrupt bargain with Henry Clay. Essentially, Jackson and Quincy Adams run against each other. John Quincy Adams does not like Jackson at all. John Quincy Adams is a wealthy aristocrat from a very well-to-do family. And Jackson is uncouth, unhinged, and a little bit crazy. And he's like, of course people don't want this. Well, when the votes come in, Jackson gets not only does he have the most popular votes, he also has the most electoral votes. But because nobody has more than 50%, it goes to the House, and Henry Clay convinces everyone who voted for him for president to vote for John Quincy Adams. And then all of a sudden now, John Quincy Adams becomes president, and he makes Henry Clay his vice president. Henry Clay wants to become vice president because he thinks it means that, or Henry Clay becomes Secretary of State because he thinks that if he's Secretary of State, then he's a heartbeat away from the White House. John Quincy Adams is John Adams' son, yes. So he is from like an aristocratic, well-to-do family. His father was the president. The Erie Canal is built during his presidency. We'll learn more about that later. As he's leaving office, he gifts Andrew Jackson with the tariff of 1828, which is like a huge oof in the world. Okay, so we're moving on to Jackson. Ready, children? Any more questions about this? After Jackson, we'll kind of wrap up the Jacksonian era and then do court cases. I literally spent 2 minutes on John Quincy Adams. I'm a fan of that. I'm waiting for more questions from you guys before I move on. Is there anything else? Give me a thumbs up. Give me a sign. I've been. Natalie asked, what's the tariff of 1828? It was one of the first tariff of abominations. The tariff of 1828 is a really high tariff that essentially really makes the South angry, and it makes the South super angry. They don't want to pay it, and it's like it's John Quincy Adams' gift to Jackson because he thinks it's funny that Jackson's going to have to deal with this. It's like his farewell gift to him. Because, oof, Jackson's got some issues this one. Ooh. Maybe. Hold on. I'm going to try to do what you said, Grace. Okay. Maybe that'll be better. Okay. We'll see. Let me know if it starts flickering again. Okay. So, Jackson. So Jackson comes into the presidency raring to go. He's been waiting for this. He's been waiting for this. And Jackson comes into the presidency with the tariff of 1828. So actually, the first thing we're going to talk about is the Nullification Crisis. On your paper, I want you to draw kind of like a thing, like a mountain. Essentially, why is the South so upset about the tariff again? Was it because they couldn't trade with whoever they wanted? The South doesn't like tariffs because it slows down trade with other countries. And when we slow down trade with other countries, they can't trade with whoever they want. And it protects American business, but more specifically, it protects New England business. So looking at the Nullification Crisis, it starts with the tariff that's passed. The South hates it. They call it an abomination. An abomination is something that's like really terrible. In Lilo and Stitch, there's this whole like scene where she says like, every Tuesday I take Pudge the Fish's sandwich. Every Tuesday I take Pudge the Fish's sandwich. But today we were out of peanut butter. So I went to my sister and I asked her what I could feed him. And do you know what she said? And she was like, what? She's like, she told me to feed him tuna. Do you know what tuna is? Fish? It's fish. I could have eaten Pudge tuna. I'd be an abomination. So I'd go to the store and get something about the things. So all that say, Elisa, very true. You can't have tuna. He's a fish. Agreed. She said don't make her an abomination because we can't engage in cannibalism. So the South calls this the tariff of abominations because that's how they liken it to cannibalism. The tariff of abominations, they pass it. Calhoun, led by Calhoun, they try to nullify it. tries to nullify. Jackson threatens with the military and the force bill. He threatens with the military and the force bill. Calhoun says if they're made to pay it, South Carolina threatens secession. And in one of my favorite exchanges in the world, Andrew Jackson tells Calhoun, if South Carolina secedes from the Union, Jackson would secede Calhoun's head from his body. Calhoun is his vice president. Threatens Calhoun. Henry Clay sees this as all escalating very quickly, so Henry Clay proposes a compromise that would lower tariffs over a period of 10 years. Honestly, Christine, I don't know when exactly it happens. Christine asked, did he step down from the VP in the middle of Jackson's first term, or was it during the second election? I'm not sure. Calhoun is his vice president, though. Which controls the weather. I do love that. Eli, I love that you know all the words. I used to watch that video every year with my students when we learned about the Tariff of Abominations, so that's how I know it. And I would like... Those of you who can remember, I like lip synced it as it was happening. I do a pretty good job at it. If I do say so myself. So that's Nullification Crisis. He also vetoed, in the Webster-Hayne debates. So Webster and Hayne. So Webster, who does not like Jackson, but doesn't support secession. He does not support secession. He is all about unity. He stands on the floor of the House and talks about unity. Webster will be known as the Great Unifier. Hayne was supporting states' rights, specifically the states' rights to nullify a federal law and to secede if they wanted to. So that's what the Webster-Hayne debates were. Jackson also... We have the National Bank come into play here. Jackson vetoes the National Bank because he believes that the charter for the first National Bank expires. So the charter for the second National Bank comes to play, and when that comes into play, when the second National Bank comes into play, Jackson vetoes it because he believes that it only puts power in the hands of the wealthy and the aristocrats, and therefore the people, the common people are left out of it. The Petticoat Affair, that's not like super pertinent. I'm pretty sure the Petticoat Affair is the same thing as the Eaton Affair. Someone wants to double check me on that. That'd be great. And if that's the case, Google it and look it up on Quizlet. I usually wouldn't say that. It's probably in the AMSCO somewhere. Off the top of my head, though, I couldn't tell you, and I can't look it up right now because we've got to do this live stream. So the National Bank, Jackson destroys it, essentially. He makes it no longer exist, which is ironic because he is, like, on the monies. This is supposed to be a bank. I don't know if that looks like a bank, but I tried to do things. So the National Bank was up for recharter, and Jackson struck it down. Jackson vetoes it, and up until this point, no president had used their veto for anything except for stuff that was considered unconstitutional. And according to McCulloch versus Maryland, which had already happened, it didn't. It says Henry Clay proposes a tariff to lower taxes over 10 years. The National Bank, he vetoes it. And up until that point, presidents only vetoes laws they thought were unconstitutional. And so when he vetoes this, it feels like a very like personal attack and this personal, and it's his personal vendetta against whoever. So like that was a whole issue as well. I'm trying to do a perception thing. I don't know how it's working. Martin Van Buren becomes the second best vice president. That's right, Antonia. So he vetoes the National Bank because it only benefits the wealthy. And thereby he puts the money that was in this bank. He takes that money out. He takes this money and distributes it to state banks, otherwise known as pet banks. Okay, is that better? Can we see it now? I can see it now. Okay, so basically, he takes the money out and puts it into state banks if they're his favorite banks, and it's the spoil system. So he puts it into pet banks essentially. Anything else you guys need to know about Jackson? Indian removal. He signs into law the Indian Removal Act, but it's largely because he feels like there's too much fighting going on over the Indians' land, and he's afraid that they're going to be massacred. And so in that, he says, we need to not let that happen, so let's put them on their own reservations, so that way they're protected. What is the kitchen cabinet? So part of the spoil system, which is like when you reward to the victor belong the spoils. So when he wins, he believes that he should put people that he likes in power. So part of that was his kitchen cabinet, which basically means, so the president's cabinet is like his group of advisors, and they have to be approved by the essentially Jackson plays favorites. So the president's cabinet has to be approved by Congress. So Jackson had a presidential cabinet, and then like down in like, I don't want to say like down in the kitchen, then he had his like buddies who were like his kitchen cabinet. There's just his group of advisors that he keeps around that aren't really approved for anything, but he has like specialists in all the different areas he wants, and they are the ones they're like his personal advisors, which it was a way for him to have advisors that weren't the people that were in office. It's not the official presidential cabinet. It's like his own personal cabinet. Why does Jackson have such a negative reputation? Largely, it's because Indian removal, he largely is. I don't know if you can count him fully culpable, but history remembers him as the reason that the Native Americans lost their land. He's the reason the Trail of Tears ends up happening eventually. He's the reason. He also is just kind of like this. It's It's kind of crazy dude. And even though the Trail of Tears doesn't happen in his presidency, he's credited with it because he validates the Treaty of Dakota. He kind of allows everything like that to happen, and he's just such like a crazy figure. Like, he threatened to decapitate his vice president. Like, he's just this bruh, such a bruh. Man of the common people. And remember, history is always told by the people who win, and so people who came after him did not like him. So after this, Martin Van Buren comes into office. Martin Van Buren, who was his vice president, becomes the president in 1836. I'm pretty sure he only lasts a year. He becomes president in 1836, and we have the Panic of 1845, which is another closing of banks. Guys, that's just an economic crisis. You don't need to know a whole lot outside of that. And he is, Martin Van Buren is also a Democrat. Remember, Jackson is the first Democrat as the party we know it as today, but their values were very different. Done. I'll move this down a little bit. See if that helps. I forgot how to get more of this paper in the things. I feel like everything's wrong. I'm making it worse, but I don't know. This over here. Okay. So, Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren, though, has the unfortunate thing. He follows Jackson. He's not as much of a common man. So remember, Jackson is all about the common man. It's always weird because when I go to the live one, it's always showing like a mirror version. It's rough. You don't need to know the years the presidents were elected, Grace. No. And so Van Buren wasn't as much of a common man, and so it was hard for people to relate to him who voted for Jackson. And so Martin Van Buren leads to, in the next election, the Whigs come up with a really great idea. The Whigs, who are the party that's always kind of had a problem with Jackson, like they're the one who calls him King Andrew. The Whigs are the ones who don't like him. No, Van Buren doesn't make any kind of radical change, at least not that I'm aware of. So the Whigs decide that they're going to play on this Jacksonian thing that people are kind of buying into, and they have a candidate in mind who, grew up in a log cabin, and he is just like, he's every person. He is... he has done all these things, and he's just like this bro. This is Miss Puckett trying to draw things with perception, and it doesn't always go the way I intend it to. So this is a log cabin. Clearly, it's the roof because roofs, logs in the front of the house. More logs, more door and logs. Okay, so we have the log cabin campaign. So running on the idea that the people want somebody who's regular. They think they want someone who's normal. And because of that, thanks, Max, for offering to help. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I tried. So they say, okay, well, if that's what the people want, ruse. Is that what I said? Oof, life. Okay, so they decide, okay, well, we can do that too. And they have William Henry Harrison run. And William Henry Harrison, Martin Van Buren, Henry Harrison, Tyler Polk. Okay. William Henry Harrison runs against, I don't think Van Buren even seeks re-election, I don't think. Maybe he does. When does he go? Things. William Henry Harrison runs for president under this idea that he is this guy from a log cabin. He's just like you. Harrison has the image commonly. Well, he identified himself to the Whigs, who are mostly aristocratic elites. Because he fought in the War of 1812, and why is he? Because he wants to feel noble. I don't think it's because he's kind of a rich guy at this point. I don't know why he identified with the Whigs, but Josh, that's a good question. But they put him forth as their candidate, William Henry Harrison. And in fact, they had this like little song that they would sing. They'd be like, just Tippecanoe and Tyler too, and like it was called like Tippecanoe and Tyler too. That's what he ran on, because he defeated the Indians at the Battle of Tippecanoe, and he won that. And you know what? He's going to win this too against Tyler. So William Henry Harrison runs. He is also a hero of the War of 1812. Which, if you'll remember, Jackson is a hero too. This is something we forgot. Also hero of 1812 at the Battle of New Orleans, because it is just like Jackson to keep fighting even when the war's over. Anyway, so William Henry Harrison becomes president. He is president for less than a month because he decides, in a wonderful idea, he is going to give his inauguration address in January in Washington. And because a coat is not professional, he does not wear a coat. And he goes outside, gives his speech, which lasts, I think, 3 hours, catches pneumonia, and dies. And Tyler, okay, so sorry, he wasn't running against Tyler. He was running against Van Buren because Tyler was his vice president. So then Tyler becomes president. Yeah, it's a big oof, Kevin. There's problems that happen. But that's what the log cabin campaign was. You guys asked about the Door War. Mostly, from what I can gather, let me double check. Okay, so basically, Rhode Island, the proponents of a democratic form organized a people's convention to draft a new state constitution. It enfranchised all adult white men while eliminating entirely blacks. Thomas Dorr was to be inaugurated as the governor, and when he was dispatched by President Tyler, wait, what? Okay, hold on. Now I'm confused. Give me a second. Sorry, guys. I'm thinking. Hold on. Okay. So, a demonstration of the passions, so the Door War. Basically, a demonstration of the passions aroused by the continuing exclusion of any group of white men from voting. Basically, the Dar War starts after 1841 when members of the Democratic Reform organized a People's Convention where they drafted a new constitution. Their constitution enfranchised all adult white men and totally eliminated blacks who before could vote according to property requirements. The reformers then ratified their constitution and inaugurated Thomas Dorr, a Rhode Island lawyer, as their governor. President John Tyler sent in federal troops to the state. They were arrested and they imprisoned Dorr for nearly 2 years for treason. From what I can gather, yeah, good old them. I'm wishing there's something that explains this better. These guys, I'm trying to understand this as well because. Yeah, but like then they're told to stop. I don't. This is not going to be on your test, and I'm going to get a better understanding of this and get back to you guys on that. So there's that. I'm looking at court cases. I think that's going to be our next step. Give me 1 second to double check if there's anything more I need to ask you about. We've talked about crop bargain. Talk about Jackson putting money into pet banks. And guys, also something else to know, voter participation increases drastically with Jackson. It was like at 20% prior to, and then it like quadruples. It's insane. And guys, when they shut down the National Bank, it also gave problems with, it also perpetuated problems with their ability to monitor money. I love that song too, Josh. Oh, In the Bleak Midwinter. Brianna, if you're watching, you could also sing that song to be your sad song. Let's see. I think I sang it for choir. I think that's why I know it. You also need to know there's a little bit about the Articles of Confederation. Shays' Rebellion happens because farmers are feeling disenfranchised and they can't pay back their taxes, so they're mad about it. Not you, Brianna, Rihanna. Appreciate it though. And the Bleak Midwinter is the song. The land ordinances, remember in the Northwest, this is just kind of an old question, like an old school flashback. They're the ones that gave a Bill of Rights to settlers. It banned slavery in the Northwest. It does all these great things. It tells us how territory can become a state. I think there's like one question only, so it's not a big deal. And things. Okay. So let's go to the court cases. This is what you came here for. As everyone like furiously texts their friends, get back on. We're talking about the court cases. Everybody watch. Okay. So, John Marshall's courts. John Marshall's court has we open up with Marbury versus Madison. And Marbury versus Madison, we establish judicial review. Basically, it says the job of the Supreme Court is to declare laws, determine the constitutionality of laws. Mar v. Mad. Then we have McCulloch v. Maryland. McCulloch v. Maryland is the one about the banks. It essentially says that National Bank is constitutional. And it establishes that state banks cannot tax federal banks. So it establishes federal over state power. Gibbons v. Ogden. Said that federal permits are more valid than state permits. So again, establishing when there's two permits, one person has a federal permit, one person has a state permit, the federal permit wins. So and this one has to do with trade. The other one you had to know, 1, 2, 3, was Dartmouth. I'm doing that wrong. Dartmouth v. Woodward, which essentially said that states can't cancel private charters. Basically, states, you're not allowed to go in and tell somebody that they have to give up their private charter to you. That's not something you can do. That's something that the federal government can do, but you can't do. All of his cases established federal over state power. You can't fight City Hall. Federal power over state power. That's what it establishes kind of across the board. Hey, Jack. So we have Dartmouth v. Woodward, Marbury versus Madison, Gibbons v. Ogden, McCulloch versus Maryland. My memory tricks, as promised, Marie. Hope you're still watching. Good way to remember Gibbons versus Ogden. Give it to me. It's about trade. Haha. McCulloch. Oh, you guys are up, down, all around. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, I just need to show you like more of the papers what you need. There we go. Is that everything that you're seeing? Okay, McCulloch versus Bunny think Bunny v. Maryland. When you think McCulloch think McMoney, this is the one that has to do with banks. It said that the national bank is constitutional, but that federal banks can't, or state banks can't tax federal banks. And remember, the national bank was a big issue during Jackson's presidency because he vetoed it, and people couldn't believe it. Dartmouth v. Woodward, I don't have a good way to remember that aside from it's a Dartmouth College, and they're a bougie university. And they can't just be taken over by the state because the state decides they want it. Famous alumni of Dartmouth. Mandy Kaling. And also Shonda. I'm going to try to spell it, so I'm not doing that. Other questions you guys have? So I'm about to be over with this because I have not sat down since I got here. So there's that. Okay, good question. You don't, yeah, I mean, okay. This is Monroe. This is Monroe. This one is Jefferson. I'm not sure about Woodard. If someone wants to look that up, that'd be great. Ooh, it's versus Woodward, not the Wookiee. I don't know. Okay, Josh, timeline. It's going to be very minimal, but I'm going to do it. We start this era kind of in judicial review is that the Supreme Court can declare laws unconstitutional. Prior to this, we didn't know what the Supreme Court did. Judicial review tells us their job is to review laws and decide whether or not they're constitutional or not. Okay, so Jefferson serves for 2 terms. Then his buddy Madison comes into play, who was the Secretary of State. Madison serves 2 terms. Then Monroe comes in. Monroe also serves, you guessed it, 2 terms. This era here is known as the Jeffersonian era of Jeffersonian republics. They're known as the Jeffersonian Republicans. Then JQA comes into play. JQA is the start of the Jacksonian era because of the corrupt bargain. This is in 1824. Because of the corrupt bargain, it makes Jackson come back with a fervor, and he like really fights against like the bougie aristocrats. Jackson comes in and serves 2 terms. Van Buren comes in. I think he only serves 1 term. Henry Harrison. Yes. Then Henry Harrison comes in, but remember Henry Harrison dies 31 days into office. His vice president takes over. That's John Tyler. And so now we have till the election of 1816. This is like 1812 to no 2016. Okay. Yeah. Monroe wins the elections of 1820 and 1816. He wins the elections of 1812 and 1808. He wins the elections of 1800 and 1804. Okay, and so I'm kind of going forward here. He steals the election of 1824. He is 1828 and 1832. This is 1836. This is like a heartbeat, but basically this is 1840. Okay. So this era here is Jackson, because the ramifications of what Jackson does is felt all through here, mostly because he's the most powerful person here. And John Quincy Adams in the corrupt bargain showed that like the aristocrats were stealing power from the common people. Martin Van Buren is elected to 1 term. He's Jackson's VP. That's why that matters. William Henry Harrison runs under that log cabin campaign so that he looks like a very Jeffersonian or very Jacksonian type of candidate. Of course, he dies. Yes, Serena MVB is Martin Van Buren. John Tyler comes into play because William Harrison dies less than a month after getting put in office. Oop. Okay, y'all, I'm going to bed. Oof. I'm glad it was a big help. Y'all are killing me. I'll love you. This one was only an hour and a half, and I say only an hour and a half. It feels like a long time. Thank you guys. I appreciate you. I think after your test tomorrow, I'm gonna have you guys write thank you notes to your teachers. Your teachers are all kind of feeling it right now, and I think it would be really great if you guys could do little thank you notes to them. So that might be something you're gonna look for after your test tomorrow. Oof. Thanks, Elisa. Thanks, Moses. Thanks, Kevin and Noah and Bree and Josh and Christine and Marie and Jesse. At this point, I'm just like, I'll give you a shout out if you say thank you to me. Oh. Max agreed. Thank you, Antonia. Thank you for seeing that Miss Huckett needs sleep. I do. I agree. I concur. Okay. I'm signing off, folks. I'm going to end the live stream. Laters.